Hey everybody, Plushie here. After a long hiatus from Hot Takes, we're finally back, and what a great time to restart because we are talking about the first servant of the year of 2026, Lord Logres, and what a servant to kick off the year. She is absolutely crazy in terms of power level and sort of breaks our normal imagination of how a servant is supposed to be designed even. So without further ado, let's get into today's very exciting hot take on Lord Logres. Taking a look at her base stats, we are already starting extremely strong here. She has the highest attack stat out of all SSR Sabers, tied to Ibuki Doji, and she even has slightly more HP than Ibuki as well. So technically, in a way, her stats are broken because you are overstated on both sides, but obviously the HP side is never that important. But having the highest attack stat out of all Sabers is really good. She has a triple Buster deck with a base gain of 0.58% per hit on a 5-hit quick card, a 4-hit arts card, 4-hit Buster cards, and a 5-hit extra attack. So her gains are pretty decent. She has about 2.3% arts card and almost 3% quick card and extra attack. And this is usually how they balance out servants with triple Buster decks because they have the least amount of MP generating cards, so each of them will have higher quality. However, I don't actually think this matters that much considering how many ridiculous MP generation effects she has in her skill set, which we'll see very soon. So even if she had really bad gains here, I don't think it actually matters. In terms of her alignments and traits, she is Star Attribute and she is Lawful Good. So she can combo with a lot of 20% bomb boost CEs, including the Olga CE, which boosts Star Attribute servants, the Gordov CE, which boosts Lawful Good servants, and the Hebertrot CE, which boosts Lawful Female servants. So if you want to rush bond her bond CE, for example, it's not going to be that difficult compared to some other servants. As for her basic traits, I don't think any of these are really important. She is Dragon, interestingly enough, like most Artorias, but also she is an animal characteristic, so it doesn't really matter. So overall, I don't think any of her traits are important, but the alignment and attributes are really nice for bond boosting. Her first skill charges her own MP by 50% at the end of each turn for 5 turns. It also gives her a 1-time 5-turn debuff immunity, a 1-time 5-turn buff removal resist at 100%, and finally, as a demerit, it drains her own HP by 1000 each turn for 5 turns, and all of this is on an 8-turn cooldown. So first and foremost, we already have an extremely overpowered skill. 50% battery at the end of each turn for 5 turns is a total of 250% MP charge. Now obviously, usually you're not going to care about all 250% of this charge. However, it is really broken because she's also a Buster servant that can stack this skill with Koyanskaya of Light, allowing her to full charge at the end of each turn without having to care about anything else. Now, you might ask, how can I double stack this because it's on an 8-turn cooldown? Well, we'll see very soon. On top of that, the debuff immunity and the buff removal resist are just nice effects against challenge quests. Again, I'm never a big fan of one-time debuff immunities because it's very easy to just use up with a minor debuff like a curse or something, but the buff removal resist is really nice. Most of them only last for 3 turns on other servants, so this one lasting for 5 turns means that you can just pop this without really worrying about wasting that effect. And finally, the demerit of 1000 HP drain doesn't really matter. It will matter even less after you see her MP, so yeah, this doesn't really matter at all. And overall, it's just a really busted skill. 8-turn cooldown might seem balanced, but very soon you'll see it's not balanced at all. Her second skill is a party-wide 20% attack up for 3 turns, a party-wide 30% crit up for 3 turns, a party-wide crit chance resistance up by 30% for 3 turns, and finally a 50 star bomb. And all of this is on a 6-turn cooldown. So this is actually going to be her most tame looking skill, but it is still pretty busted. The party-wide 20% attack up makes her a really decent multi-core support and just a decent support in general. It is the highest rank of charisma. The 30% crit up is a really nice bonus, especially when comboed with the 50 star bomb, giving the entire party guaranteed crits, once again making her a crit support of some sort. And finally, the crit resist up means that your party is not going to be easily critted. As a reminder, how this works is that most servants actually have a lower base crit chance than 30%. So most of the time, if they don't give themselves a crit boost, they can basically not crit your team when this effect is up. So that's really nice. And of course, you can stack this so that you are even more protected against crits, even with enemies that have crit chance boosts, for example. And this is all on the 6-turn cooldown, so it is really nice. And as you'll see very soon, once again, just like the 8-turn cooldown, this is deceptively high. The cooldown is in reality much lower than 6, which makes this skill even more exceptional. And finally, her third skill is a self 2x 3-turn anti-purge defense, or solemn defense, however you want to call it. It's also a 3-turn self 50% buster up, and it reduces the entire party's cooldown by 2 turns, including her own. And finally, this skill comes with a pretty heavy demerit, where she gets put on a 3-turn timer, and after the 3-turn is up, she puts herself to sleep. It is the exact same type of sleep as Oberon's skill 3, where you cannot prevent it by debuff immunity, you cannot be woken up from taking hits, and you cannot swap her out or sacrifice her when she is sleeping. However, it is not an eternal sleep, and she wakes up after a set amount of turns depending on the skill's level. At skill level 1, she wakes up after 6 turns, at skill level 6, she wakes up after 4 turns, and finally at skill level 10, she wakes up after only 2 turns. And all of this is on a 10-turn cooldown. So arguably, this is the most busted skill on Lord Logres. The anti-purge defense and the mana burst is obviously really strong for herself, especially considering she has a triple buster deck. But the highlight here is the party-wide cooldown reduction by 2. We have never seen an effect like this other than the NPC Olga from Lost Spell 7, which ended up not being the same as the playable one, and Super Aoko, who needs to transform and also drain 100% of her own battery to do it, and she doesn't even reduce her own cooldown. So this is obviously a really broken effect, effectively making her first and second skill cooldowns 6 and 4 turns in reality instead of 8 and 6 turns. This makes them really powerful skills individually, and also allows you to double stack her first skill with the help of Koyan Light in order to full charge 100% every turn, which is of course really good for buster looping. Speaking of buster looping, this skill is absolutely busted, considering you don't really have to care about the demerit because it triggers at the end of the 3rd turn, meaning that by the time she falls asleep from this, the run is over. This means that this skill can be used immediately on turn 1 without repercussion, and doing that actually allows any support who has a skill that has a cooldown of 5 or below, recast that skill again on turn 3. Because if you have their Append 5 unlocked, on turn 1 you use that skill, the cooldown goes to 5, but with the help of Append 5 it goes to 4, and then with the help of Logres it goes down to 2. So by the time turn 3 rolls around, the skill would be back. This significantly increases Lord Logres' looping damage cap because you're able to double cast some support skills. If you want to take it even further, with the help of specifically double Koyan Light and Atlas Academy Mystic Code, you are able to double cast Lord Logres' 3rd skill, allowing her to reduce the entire party's cooldown by a total of 4. This means that you can triple cast her 2nd skill and also double cast all of Koyan Light's buff skills, which makes her actually a really powerful anti-man servant because you're able to double cast Koyan Light's anti-man power mod on her, despite her not actually having any anti-man effects in her skill set or MP. We'll get more into that when talking about her farming, but this party-wide cooldown reduction by 2 is absolutely broken in buster looping. In a challenge quest, this skill is slightly more balanced because you will most likely have to take the sleep turns, and it is balanced in the sense that even though she reduces her own cooldown by 2 the moment she uses this skill, because after 3 turns she has to take 2 turns of sleep, her cooldown doesn't go down during her sleep turns. So in the grand scheme of things, if the fight drags on long enough, she doesn't actually reduce her own cooldown by 2. She just borrows it to use it early and then pays for it later, in a sense. If you play card games, this probably makes a little bit more sense. It's sort of like mana cheating or overload in Hearthstone, where you are taking resources from a future turn and then using it now and then paying for it later. But despite all that, she's still really broken in a challenge quest. We'll talk about it when talking about her MP even more, but in general, this just helps her supports use their skills a lot faster than usual, which is really strong because supports usually have really broken skills. So overall, this skill is absolutely nuts, just busted, one of the most broken skills in the game, period. Despite their attempt to try to balance it, I still think it is broken. And on top of the cooldown reduction, they gave it like such a solid survival effect with the Solemn Defense and a 3-turn mana burst as well. Taking a look at her passives, she has the 2 most standard Saber class passives, Max Resistance A, which is a debuff resist by 20%, which is nice to have, and Riding A, which is 10% quick up, which is pretty lame. But she also has a unique passive that boosts the effectiveness of her allies' guts. So, if any of her allies in the front line procs a guts effect, they revive with double the HP. So for example, if the guts is a 3000 HP guts, they will revive with 6000 HP instead. And they also get a 3-turn 20% attack up. This works very well with servants with massive self-guts, such as King Hassan and Cagliostro. This allows them to effectively full heal after reviving with a guts. And this is also very good with servants that gives the entire party guts as a supportive effect, such as Scheherazade, Irisfeel, but most importantly, Tonalico. This passive really solidifies her synergy with Tonalico. We already mentioned her 3rd skill having a good effect for Tonalico's skill 3. Her MP would have another effect that also helps Tonalico spam her skill 3. And now this passive makes her skill 3 a lot better. And they're both Takeuchi faces, so who knows? They really like to favor these servants anyways, so it's probably intentional. But regardless, it makes them a really good combo. Now do remember, this does not proc on herself, so she does not revive with double HP, nor does she get attack up. So she would technically be the most frail out of the 3 if your main survival effect is Guts. And also, she can still proc this even when she is sleeping from her skill 3 effect. So do not worry, you still want to keep her alive even if she's sleeping on the field because of this passive. So overall, really strong set of passives, especially the 3rd one being a good combo in challenge quests. And finally, Lord Logres' MP is an AoE 5-hit Buster MP that gives her 1 turn of Invo Pierce before the MP does damage, and the MP itself deals 200% super effective damage against threat to humanity enemies. After the MP activates, it increases the party's attack by 20% for 3 turns, charges the party by 20% MP, and it also gives the party 1 stage of overcharge boost for 1 time 3 turns. The MP also heals the party by 2000 HP. And finally, the overcharge effect of the MP is a 1 turn MP damage up that happens before the MP does damage, that scales from 20% all the way up to 60%. So this is an absurd MP. This MP is good even if you remove all of the offensive parts as a supportive MP. But first, let's talk about the offensive part. Invo Pierce, obviously really good. This is a buff as well, and it's not tied to the MP, so she's able to use the Invo Pierce on her cards as well. The 200% super effective against threat to humanity is not going to pop up very often in normal farming, but in main story quests and certain raids, this would be really useful. Now, kind of unfortunate that we already had the finale with the fantasy tree raids, so she can't really use this on that, but I bet in the future we'll have more raids that have threat to humanity. So when that happens, the 200% super effective, which effectively doubles her damage, would make her like a single target servant. And after the MP does its damage, it becomes a very competent supportive MP, because it gives the party charisma, 20 charge, 1 stage overcharge, and 2000 heal. And if the charisma with 20 charge with overcharge together sounds very familiar to you, that's because it's the exact same effect as Proto Merlin's 2nd skill. But instead of having a 6-turn cooldown, this is used every single turn, while Logres is outputting damage with her MP. considering how easily she can spam her MP with the help of her skill 1 and the MP itself, which gives her 20 more charge after she uses her MP. This is absurd. This is already better than a lot of like tier 2 supportive MPs. For example, Himiko's MP looks like crap compared to this, right? I would take this MP over Himiko's MP even if it did 0 damage because of the charge and how spammable it is due to Lord Logres' skill set compared to Himiko. And Himiko's MP actually does 0 damage, right? I'll even go as far to say that I prefer this MP's supportive effects over Merlin's MP. Because yes, they do different things. Merlin generates stars while this doesn't, but you're mainly using Merlin for the heals and the party charge. And this MP does both while also giving overcharge, which helps other supportive MPs, and also charisma, which helps the party's attack in general. Even the overcharge effect is boosted by itself because she gives herself overcharge, so the MP damage up effect starting from round 2, assuming she uses her MP every turn, which is super easy, she gets 30% MP damage up instead of just 20%, which, I mean, to be fair, that is the least broken part of this MP. And the only MPs that are better than this are like S tier support MPs, such as Castoria's MP or Summer Tiamat's MP. I don't think any other MP really comes close to this in terms of how much value it provides overall. And once again, I have to remind you, this is an offensive MP. Its main purpose is to do damage, but on top of the damage, it does all of this crap as well. So yeah, we'll get more into that in her challenge quest section, I guess, but just so stupid. This character is so stupid. Like, I tried to hold back when talking about her skill set, but this character is so stupid, blatantly broken, absolute Reddit custom servant tier design. In terms of single core buster looping, there are 3 main comps that Lord Logres can use that in my opinion are the most optimal. Well, technically 4, but we'll get into that in just a bit. The first comp is going to be double Koyan Light Atlas Academy Mystic Code. This comp aims to double cast Lord Logres' skill 3 so that both Koyan Lights also have the ability to double cast their offensive buffs. It's really good in the sense that you save an entire backline for bond farming, and also it's really good against man attribute enemies because you double cast the anti-man on Koyan Light, and spectacular against human man attribute enemies because that makes Koyan Light's second skill a 100% PMod, and casting it 4 times total makes her damage absolutely ridiculous. Now remember, with Lord Logres, the append skills on your supports would actually matter, and also your skill sequences have to not be screwed up, otherwise you won't get the correct cooldown reductions that you need. I have a video detailing how you do this, but I will, of course, briefly explain the skill sequencing and also probably have a short reminder on the screen. So with this comp, you want to use Lord Logres' skill 1 and skill 2, then both of your Koyan Lights skill 3 and skill 2s. Then you want to use your Lord Logres' skill 3 to reduce everybody's cooldown. And finally, you use double Koyan Light's skill 1 to reduce Lord Logres' cooldown. And if you do that, her skill 2 would be back up. You can use it immediately again, and then you use Atlas Academy's Mystic Code to reduce the cooldown further. And then finally, you get to use her skill 1 again as well. Remember to press that. So now, Lord Logres has 2 stacks of her first skill, her second skill, and everything else is 1 stack, so she can full charge to 100% MP every single turn. On turn 2, Lord Logres' third skill would be back if you have her appends at max, and then when you activate it again, both Koyan Lights will be able to use their skills again as well. For this comp, Koyan Light would need her append 5 skill unlocked and at least at level 6 if you want to double cast her steroids as soon as turn 2. Lord Logres herself would need a fully maxed out append 5 because she would need all of her skills at maximum cooldown. The second comp is basically, instead of using Atlas Academy Mystic Code, you're using Plug Suit into Oberon. With this comp, you want to use Logres' skill 1 and skill 2 first, and before using her skill 3, you use one of your Koyan Light's entire skill set, and then swap her out for Oberon. and then you use Oberon's skill 1 before using Logres' skill 3. This is because, as I mentioned earlier, any skills that are below cooldown 5, and if that servant also have their append 5 unlocked, Logres will allow them to cast their skills on turn 1 and then again on turn 3. So this will allow you to double stack Oberon's skill 1, which will boost your damage overall and of course your wave 3 burst damage. And then of course you then use your second Koyan Light's entire skill set. With this, on the second turn, you would only have 70% MP from Logres' skill 1 and Logres' MP's charge effect combined. But you do have Oberon's skill 2 to make up for it, and also because of the cooldown reduction, by turn 2 you would have access to Logres' skill 1 again. On turn 3 you would get 100% MP back from double casting Logres' skill 1, and 20 more from Logres' MP. So you'll be at 120 MP, and then Oberon's skill 3's demerit will take effect and drain you back down to 100. If you only have Lord Logres at MP 1, you actually cannot go to 120 because your MP gauge only goes up to 100. So you will be drained back down to 80. However, it is fine because Oberon's skill 1 will be available again, so you can use it and charge yourself back to 100. And then of course use Oberon's skill 3 and your Mystic Code for the final wave. For this comp, Lord Logres' append 5 skill must be unlocked and at least leveled up to 6, because you need to double cast both her first and second skill in this comp. And for Oberon, you need to at least unlock his append 5 and keep it at level 1. Because you are recasting one of his skills. So with this comp, you're basically sacrificing double casting Koyan Light skills on wave 2 for better wave 3 burst damage. And this is the quote-unquote most standard way of looping, because just like most other Buster Loopers, you're using double Koyan Light plug Oberon. But the next comp I'm going to introduce is actually, in my opinion, the best generic comp for Lord Logres. The third comp is going to be Lord Logres, Oberon, Koyan Light, and Waver. Now, this comp relies on the fact that Waver skill 1 is also a 5-turn cooldown skill. And combining it with Oberon skill 1, you get 50% MP charge total. And you can use it both on turn 1 and on turn 3. So there's actually no need to double cast Lord Logres' skill 1 in order to get enough charge. So the way you set up this looping is you have Lord Logres' skill 1 and skill 2 activated, and then you use your Koyan Light's entire skill set, she's in the front line, and then swap her out for Waver. And then of course you dump all of Waver skills and Oberon skill 1 before using Lord Logres' skill 3. On turn 2, once again, you would have 70% MP charge because you only have one stack of Lord Logres' skill 1. And Lord Logres' skill 2 would be ready by then. So you use it for damage, and you would use Oberon skill 2, just like the last comp, to give yourself 100% charge. And then finally, on the third turn, once again, you should end with 70% MP charge because of Lord Logres' skill 1 and the MP effect combined. However, Oberon's skill 2 demerit will drain you back down to 50%. But you don't have to worry, because Waver's skill 1 would be back at the time, and Oberon's skill 1 would be back too, combining into a total of 50 MP charge, making your total MP charge exactly 100. And then of course use all of your burst damage skills and then use your MP. One more bonus thing about the Waver comp, if you are really willing to, you can technically use his MP on the third wave, because he can charge from 0 to 100. But again, I'm not counting it in damage calculations just because I think using supportive MPs are kind of cheating. But yeah, if you really need the extra damage, you can do it, in 90++ especially. For this comp, both Waver and Oberon must at least have their Append 5 skill unlocked, because both of them wants to recast one of their skills. As for Lord Logres, technically she only needs her Append 5 skill at level 1, because you are only double casting her skill 2 and not her skill 1 nor her skill 3. However, I would really recommend to max out Lord Logres' Append 5 skill if you want to use her regularly, just because of how cooldown reduction reliant she is in many of her farming comps. If we take a look at this diagram, comparing the three comps in terms of their traitless anti-man and anti-man plus human damage, we can see that in traitless, the Waver, Koyan Light, Oberon comp actually outdamages the double Koyan Light Oberon comp, which is a little bit surprising because this is not the standard way of farming, but Waver has really become very strong after his buff. So if you have Waver, you should actually run this comp over the double Koyan Light one. Even against man attribute, the three comps have differing damage spreads across three different waves. The Waver and Koyan Light comp still has the higher burst damage on the third wave compared to the double Koyan Light comp. And if you want the highest damage across three different waves, especially on wave 2, then you might want to do the double Koyan Light Atlas comp instead of double Koyan Light Plug Oberon. So I actually think against man attribute, double Koyan Light Plug Oberon low-key is the worst comp. And finally, against human and man attribute together, double Koyan Light Atlas is undoubtedly the best comp. Even on wave 3, it outdamages Oberon because you are quad casting a 100% power mod. But of course, this is going to be very, very rare in terms of the situations that this apply to. So again, in general, I would recommend using Oberon plus Waver plus Koyan Light for your low Logres buster looping. The secret quote-unquote fourth comp I was talking about is basically just an alteration of the third comp, but you swap out Koyan Light with Merlin. Because if you really think about it, you're not double casting Lord Logres' skill 1. So Koyan Light isn't giving you more charge in the sense of double casting Lord Logres' skills. You are just double casting Logres' skill 2 for an extra charisma proc. And on wave 1, you don't need her 50% charge, because you have Waver who charges 50, you have Oberon's skill 1 who charges 20, so all you need is 30 extra charge. So Koyan Light only gives you the anti-man P mod and the 50% buster up. And with Merlin, yes, you cannot double cast the charisma anymore, but Merlin has an extra charisma when compared to Koyan Light in terms of his steroids. So if you're not fighting against man attribute enemies, Merlin technically gives you higher wave 1 damage than the Koyan Light comp, and then it equalizes starting on wave 2. So you can use Merlin instead of Koyan Light. However, I don't want to get too deep into it because you're literally just improving wave 1 damage. Not everybody has Merlin, and you have to be careful not to have both Merlin and Oberon on the field at the same time because they have that really dumb passive. So after comparing the different buster looping comps that Logres can use, let's actually compare Logres' damage to other buster loopers. And mainly I'm going to compare her with other buster loopers that don't need starting charge CEs, of course, because that is her specialty compared to 50 MP starting charge CE required loopers. But we'll take a look at some of them as well, considering how strong Logres is. And also, we're just going to assume they're all MP5 because I do believe all the servants I'm going to compare her to today don't have MP upgrades. And also, I'm going to assume no CE instead of using Black Grill because at this point in the game, I feel like a lot of people do actually care about 6 slotting in terms of damage. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Comparing Logres to the other no starting charge CE required buster loopers, her damage is so much higher than them, it's not even funny. Partially because of Waver actually being a better damage booster than Koyan Light in many cases, but again, being able to use Waver is Lord Logres' privilege. So comparing her Waver Oberon Koyan Light comp to other people's double Koyan Light Oberon comp, you can see that her damage is just better than all of the others. Melusine, Tonalico, Arcoade, she's just better than them on all 3 waves. Especially on the last wave, the burst damage is insane. It's almost twice as much as most of these other servants' damage. Now, I will admit, if all of them have access to Black Grail, the gap would be smaller, because for a lot of these other Buster Loopers, they don't have a good source of MP damage boost in their kit, so Oberon can't really double up a lot of it, while Logres is using Oberon and Waver, and she's doubling up both Waver and Oberon's skill 1s, so she has a lot of MP damage ups in her kit. So in a comparison where we assume no CE are used, Lord Logres is going to have way better scaling than the others. Lord Logres, if you want to match her MP damage in terms of Buster Looping, you'll have to actually bring out servants that hit 1.5 times class advantage. Mainly, I'm going to compare her with the Pretenders because she's a Night class servant, and taking a look at Solomon and Typhon's damage. Typhon, because she has to run double Oberon, her damage is a little bit scuffed in terms of, efficiency, because she has to basically give up on one of Oberon's Buster Ups. And all 3 of her waves in terms of Buster Looping are still lower than Logres, even though it got a lot closer than the other neutral loopers did. And taking a look at Solomon, he has a better wave too, because he can double stack his anti-7 class servant power mod with double Koyan Light by turn 2, but still, his burst is lower than Logres, even assuming he's hitting 1.5 times class advantage. So this is super impressive if you are a neutral looper that can beat 1.5 times loopers, and Lord Logres can kind of do that, right? And just a reminder, Lord Logres can hit class advantage, so if she's up against Berserkers and Lancers, she's gonna do double the damage you see here, especially Berserkers, because her Append 3 skill is anti-Berserker as well. And finally, I'm going to briefly compare her to the 2 Buster Loopers that are the strongest, assuming you have 50 MP starting charge, because during certain events you will have 50% starting charge CEs. Of course, I'm talking about Arjuna Alter and Kukulkan, and taking a look at the damage comparisons here, Kukulkan actually holds up pretty well despite also doing neutral like Logres. In fact, her second wave damage surpasses Logres' second wave damage because double stacking her very powerful steroids is still really good in 2026. And Arjuna Alter, this is assuming he's hitting 1.5 times class advantage, again, doesn't reach the same level of damage on wave 3 as Logres, but beats her on wave 2, similar to the trend that Kukulkan has. So, yeah, this is pretty good to see, simply because, older servants still got it as long as they have the ability to have starting charge. So it's not like a completely destruction in terms of power creep, at least, right? But once again, Logres proves herself to be one of the strongest Buster Loopers in terms of MP damage. Now, the reason I keep emphasizing in terms of MP damage is because Yu Olga Marie exists. She is considered the best Buster Looper after her release, and honestly, I would still consider her the best Buster Looper right now. There's no real reason to list her damage out because her MP damage is absolute trash. When compared to Logres, it's not even close, but her damage against a single target with a Buster Brave Chain, despite how powerful Lord Logres' damage is still going to be higher simply because a Buster Brave Chain full crit is just that powerful, right? So, Yu Olga Marie is more flexible in terms of dealing damage to like one big target, while Lord Logres is more powerful in a traditional sense as a Buster Looper. So yeah, up to you which one you like better. I would say if you already have a fully invested in Yu Olga Marie, pulling for a 120 Logres just for the sake of Buster Looping doesn't feel like the smartest idea, but there's definitely, other things you can use Logres for, which I'll mention in just a bit. But of course, Lord Logres isn't just good at single core, she can also do a decent bit of party buffing, which means that she can fit into multi-core teams. She has a charisma on her second skill, her MP charges the entire party, gives the entire party overcharge, and gives the entire party even more attack up, and of course, her third skill can reduce the entire party's cooldown by 2. Once again, as I mentioned multiple times already, any skills that have a cooldown of 5 or below can be casted twice with the help of a single Lord Logres. So you can pair her with a lot of different DPSs to recast their offensive buffs as well as their MP batteries. Lord Logres does have a pretty big problem though in terms of multi-core farming, which is her lack of any immediate MP charge effects. Her first skill is a delayed 50% charge at the end of each turn, and her MP gives the party charge instead of one of her active skills, meaning that Lord Logres herself would not be able to get her MP easily on wave 1 if you want to use her MP as soon as possible, which is usually ideal, and also she cannot give other units charge immediately and would have to give them charge later on in the form of the cooldown reduction or her MP. So you would either have to run her with 2 other DPSs that have a lot of self-charge or a decent bit of party charge, or more likely a DPS and another meta support, because Lord Logres once again can allow supports to double cast part of their battery skills, such as Waver skill 1 and Oberon skill 1, or you can even pair Lord Logres with Koyan Light and another DPS and still achieve a similar effect on that one DPS as double Koyan Light, because Lord Logres plus Koyan Light is still a total cooldown reduction of 4. So frankly, if your goal is just to MP 3 times with multiple DPSs, then the possibilities are infinite, right? You can pull off so many different comps with Logres, and you can just have fun with it. However, in my opinion, there's going to be very little comps that include Lord Logres in terms of multi-core that actually surpasses her single core performance. We just showed how good her damage is in single core, and of course being a Buster Looper, she also doesn't care about enemy count. So unless you are really pairing her with another single target, which is not always the easiest because I just mentioned Logres has trouble using her MP immediately on wave 1, so if you're pairing her with a single target, then a single target might have to MP on wave 1, which doesn't always work. You might just prefer running Logres single core. Now, to extend that topic, I actually want to briefly talk about Lord Logres' combo with Tonalico. When talking about her skill set, I already mentioned multiple times that those two servants seems to have built-in synergy. However, I believe in terms of farming, they are the least compatible when compared to Challenge Quest, for example. Because in most cases, you're going to be MPing with Tonalico first before Lord Logres, due to Logres not having any immediate MP charge, and also Tonalico needing to MP in order to reduce her cooldown for her skill 3. Now Logres' cooldown -2 on her skill 3 of course helps with Tonalico's skill 3, but at the same time you can also achieve the same effect by just running anyone with overcharge +2, such as Koyanskaya of Dark. So I don't actually see Lord Logres being particularly good here with Tonalico. She's just yet another viable option to pair with Tonalico, which again, AoE on AoE, most of the times that is not preferable over single core looping. All of this is not to say that Logres is bad at multi-core farming. It's almost like she's too good at single core farming that it's hard to justify taking the other route. But in multi-core farming, I do see a potential for Lord Logres to be a pure support, because she does have charisma and a party-wide cooldown reduction. So even if you don't use her MP at all, there might be certain comps that work well with her. Again, I did not really deep dive into what specific comps work well with this, but I believe any comp that has like a 5-turn cooldown battery unit can work well with Logres as a pure support. So I do look forward to the very creative teams that people come up with involving Lord Logres in the future. Now let's briefly talk about her Challenge Quest performance, and what else can I say other than it's absolutely broken. Once again, it's all about her MP. Her MP, whenever activated, gives the entire party a 3-turn duration attack up, 1 stage overcharge, 20% MP charge, and 2000 HP heal. And because of her first skill effect, combined with the MP also charging herself back, she can basically spam this for free for 5 turns in a row. Like, yeah, you need to make up for the 30 extra charge somewhat, but simply including another character, or her getting hit, or using one of her cards would probably suffice. And even if you can't use it literally 5 turns in a row, it's probably like 4 out of 5 turns she gets to use his MP, which is ridiculous. It's a really, really strong supportive MP if you use it every turn. And while all of this is happening, every time she activates her MP, she's also doing very solid AoE buster damage that pierces invulnerability. Now obviously, Lord Logres has to go to sleep with her 3rd skill, so she can't really spam this forever. You can either delay the activation of her 3rd skill so that you run the entire course of her 1st skill duration of 5 turns, so you get enough momentum, buffing your team enough before she has to go to sleep so you don't care. Or you can even just activate it immediately round start, right? You get the cooldown on your other supports, and then, you know, while the 2 turns she's sleeping, she's still charging herself to full. So when she wakes up, she can immediately use her MP again to heal the party, buff the party, charge the party, and do damage. So with Lord Logres, honestly, any team really works. I would say you probably still want someone that can do party-wide heart survival, so you can block enemy MPs, like Castoria or Merlin or Tiamat or whatever. But anything else doesn't really matter, because she is both the DPS and the healer and the party charger and the party attack buffer. She has so many roles compressed into one that you can practically make any team work. Merlin is still a great addition. Like, you can run the traditional Merlin, Castoria, Morgan Immortal team, but you swap out Morgan for Logres, which is infinitely better because Logres actually has party charge while still maintaining the overcharge and just a lot more party supportability. I have a video demonstrating that. Another thing I really like to do when building teams with Lord Logres is actually including another servant that has a damaging MP. Considering how much Lord Logres charges the party as well as gives the party attack up, it almost feels wasteful not to include another DPS MP to take advantage of these MP charge effects and attack boosts. This also means that you will still have a damaging MP even when Lord Logres is taking her 2-turn mandatory sleep from her skill 3's demerit. The 2 DPS servants that I like to pair with Lord Logres the most is Tonaliko and Koyanskaya of Light. Tonaliko, of course, has almost perfect synergy with Lord Logres. With Lord Logres' MP and skill 3 combined, Tonaliko can spam her skill 3 relatively often, giving your party a different way of surviving enemy MPs than the traditional party-wide invul or solemn defense. And Lord Logres' passive, of course, makes these guts a lot better. You now revive with 6000 HP instead of just 3000 HP, and after the guts proc, Lord Logres can also heal your party back up to a decent amount of HP with her MP. Also a reminder that Tonaliko's first skill gives the party MP charge every turn, and her third skill, whenever she activates, is a party-wide 50% charge. So Lord Logres and Tonaliko almost never run out of MP charge, despite being a buster predominant team. So it's very often that you get to chain their MP back to back, and then on the next turn, you get to do it again. So you are basically spamming multiple AoE MPs every single turn with this duo. Another damaging MP unit I like to pair with Logres is going to be Koyanskaya of Light. Koyanskaya of Light, with her first skill's cooldown reduction, stacks very well with Lord Logres' cooldown reduction. Koyanskaya's MP also charges the entire party depending on overcharge levels, which Logres can give her. And Logres, of course, also charges her MP with her own MP. So this is also another team that has a lot of party MP charge. So you can very often spam Logres' MP and Koyan Light's MP and even back-to-back them multiple turns in a row. And Koyan Light's MP, on top of charging the entire party, also drains all enemies' MP gauge by 1, meaning that if you spam her MP enough, the enemy doesn't really get to MP very often. So this is yet another duo that I really like to pair together. In fact, pairing all 3 of these servants together Lord Logres, Tonaliko, and Koensky of Light actually yields one of my favorite modern teams, because this is a team that has really good sustainability, a way to deal with enemy AoE MPs, and has a bunch of MP spam and damage while not having any of the traditionally considered almost mandatory party-wide invul/solemn defense effect. Now, this team is by no means the best team for Lord Logres. In fact, if we're talking objectively, which team has the higher chance of beating a boss without much trouble, including Castoria or Merlin is probably still a better idea. However, due to how powerful Lord Logres is, and especially her combo with other servants such as Tonaliko and Koensky of Light, you can afford to build this kind of quote-unquote hyper-offensive team where you're spamming damage-dealing MPs every single turn multiple times, while still having enough sustainability to keep up with a longer game plan. In many senses, Lord Logres feels like a card-type non-specific and modernized version of Tamamo no Mae, both having the ability to give the entire party cooldown reduction while also charging the entire party's MP and healing the entire party with their MP. Of course, Lord Logres isn't able to repeat the cooldown reduction on her MP as often as Tamamo, but the trade-off is she has a way more explosive version of cooldown reduction tied to her skill 3. So I actually can see a rationale to pull for 1 MP level of Lord Logres and using her mainly as a support. She's fun, she's strong, and she's definitely usable in multiple teams. And finally, in challenge quests, I can also see Lord Logres being a better cooldown reduction support than Koensky of Light, because if you're not running Buster, sometimes Lord Logres' charisma effect and the crit up is better than Koenskya's Buster up. And also, Lord Logres has the ability to reduce another character's cooldown on top of your DPS's, meaning that if you're able to allow them to double cast your steroids, then your damage is going to be a lot better in min turns as well. So yet another reason for at least dedicated min turn players to pull for Lord Logres even if you don't intend to use her as your main DPS. My final verdict on this servant is that she's absolutely nuts. She is designed to be overtuned and they absolutely achieved their goal. She is a wonderful Buster Looper, she is a wonderful challenge quest DPS, she is a decent multi-core support, and she can even be used as a pure support despite being a DPS as well. So even though I don't think any servants are must rolls nowadays in this game, Lord Logres came a little bit closer than a traditional DPS to being a must roll, because there's a very good justification to pull for her at MP1 just to use as a support. Obviously not to the level of someone like Summer Tiamat, but pretty darn close in my opinion, honestly. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I apologize for this taking so long. Again, same excuses all the time. Schoolwork is heavy, and also I have a lot of other stuff to deal with, and I don't have the best sleeping schedule, so I keep falling asleep just like Lord Logres. But hopefully at least there are like 12 hours for you guys to digest the video and decide if you want to pull for it or not, and let's all look forward together to next week's flower event.